Friday Bible study. I have Elder Eddie. And I am Andre. So today we're going to be getting into the last 3 chapters of 2 Kings. And just before we delve into the Bible, could Eddie say a quick prayer for us?
Dear Lord, thank you so much for this Sabbath day, Lord. Thank you for this opportunity you've blessed us with, that we can sit down and do this Bible study. Be with all those that are supporting us behind the scenes, Mame and Bill, and just continue to be with us as we dive into your word. Guide us and help us all to learn something new. This we pray in your holy name. Amen.
Amen. Okay. So we're starting in chapter 23, and this is just the beginning of Josiah changing things up. So we'll read 5 verses each. I think we're going to go to verse 20. I think it's verse 20. Okay. If you read 1 to 5.
Then the king called together all the elders of Judah and Jerusalem. He went up to the temple of the Lord with the people of Judah, the inhabitants of Jerusalem, the priests and the prophets, all the people from the least to the greatest. He read in their hearing all the words of the book of the covenant, which had been found in the temple of the Lord. The king stood by the pillar and renewed the covenant in the presence of the Lord, to follow the Lord and keep his commands, statutes, and decrees with all his heart and all his soul, thus confirming the words of the covenant written in this book. Then all the people pledged themselves to the covenant. The king ordered Hilkiah, the high priest, the priest next in rank, and the doorkeepers to remove from the temple of the Lord all the articles made for Baal and Asherah and all the starry hosts. He burned them outside Jerusalem in the fields of the Kidron Valley and took the ashes to Bethel. He did away with the idolatrous priests appointed by the kings of Judah to burn incense on the high places of the towns of Judah and on those around Jerusalem. Those who burned incense to Baal, to the sun and to the moon, and to the constellations and to all the starry hosts.
Okay, I'll continue from verse 6. He took the Asherah pole from the temple of the Lord to the Kidron Valley outside Jerusalem and burned it there. He ground it to powder and scattered the dust over the graves of the common people. He also tore down the quarters of the male shrine prostitutes that were in the temple of the Lord, the quarters where women did weaving for Asherah. Josiah brought all the priests from the towns of Judah and desecrated the high places, from Geba to Beersheba, where the priests had burned incense. He broke down the gateway at the entrance of the gate of Joshua, the city governor, which was on the left of the city gate. Although the priests of the high places did not serve at the altar of the Lord in Jerusalem, they ate unleavened bread with their fellow priests. He desecrated Topheth, which was in the valley of Ben Hinnom. So no one else could use it to sacrifice their son or daughter in the fire to Molech. Actually, let's even in these first 10 verses, there's a lot going on. So what we've been reading is about Josiah. He's found, or one of his men has found some writings, some ancient writings from the Lord. And Josiah's seen those, heard them, and he's now trying to change Judah into a place that follows those ancient writings from the Lord. And we're just reading a few things that he's started to do. And yeah, I guess we could finish off the rest. So if you keep reading, or unless you have any comments on that.
I think it's just really fascinating to see what Josiah has done, because I think when I when I was reading this, and as we've been reading together, from the previous chapter that your wife Banner took us through last week, we realized that this all started from them discovering the book of the law. The book of the law. And so following this, what we see next is, it's not like he just read it and was just there like, well, good read, I'm going to carry on with whatever I'm doing. Do you get what I mean? He's like, no, I've clearly gone astray. And it's like, what do we do when we realize we've sinned is kind of what I think the question that Josiah is answering here, you know? Like, what do you do when we realize we've sinned? And it's a question that I've been having to deal with a lot lately, you know? Do I just continue with things as is? Do I ask God for forgiveness? Do I, as said in the verses, to follow, renew the covenant in the presence of the Lord, to follow the Lord and keep his commands, statutes and decrees with all his heart and all his soul? I think to myself, when I sin, do I tell God, after I've sinned, I'm going to try and follow you with all my heart, soul, and everything? Or do I just say, Lord, I'm sorry? Do you get what I don't know if you get what
yeah, I get
do you
exactly
get what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I think to myself, just a short thing, I think to myself about my own relationships, and then again my, human relationships, and I think about my relationship with God, and it makes me think, maybe in some ways, when you hurt someone, you would tell them, I'm sorry, I'll try to fix up. But then sometimes maybe with God, it's easier for us to just say, I'm sorry. Do you get what I mean?
Well, like, because you know he's gonna forgive you, so sorry, God. Let's move on. Let's act like nothing's happened. But I think here you can see it's a lot more than just sorry. Yeah.
We had to burn everything. Do you get what I mean? That thing that you hid there, we need to burn it. And I really like the passage which you read about them removing certain things so that people could no longer bury their children. Burn their children. Yeah. Because it makes me think, when we sin, do we remove the things that made us the stumbling blocks? Do you get what I mean? Will we saying, I'm sorry for sinning, but everything else is there, you know what I mean? Like, nothing's changed. You know what I mean? Like, I know same time tomorrow? Same place. Like, I'm still going past that place when I go home, so I think it just called that to question. And then the last thing was just the bit where it says that even after all of this stuff that's happened, we see that the priests of the high places, not the priests of the church or the temple, the priests of the high places, they did not come to serve at the altar of the Lord, which kind of leads you to think that even seeing all of this stuff, sometimes it's like, yeah, I can see what you're doing. I'm not coming to serve you. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah. I was also, when I was reading this, I thought about his age as well. Because there's no direct sort of timeline, but I imagine he's still very young at this point. And it kind of goes to show, like, he's young and he's ready to make all these changes. I can't imagine it will be well received. Like, I know he's king and everything, but he's a young man and he's literally changing everyone's lifestyle here. When I read this, I think it's happened many times in these kind of books, but it's like, we believe in the God of the Bible, and imagine someone getting rid of all the Bibles, all the churches kind of thing. That's what he's basically doing to them. But obviously we know they're wrong, but they think they're right, and he's completely changing everything. So I can't imagine as a young man how that might have been daunting or just difficult to even start. Yeah, of course, man.
I was just going to bounce off what you've said there, and I think it's a very good point. when God enters the mix, I fear that some of us kind of want to keep things the same way, if you get what I mean. But it's a really good point that you brought across about everything needing to change. And it does make me contemplate my own life, where there's certain things where I'm like, yeah, God's in my life, but certain things can stay the same, right? You know, we can keep those high places. What's wrong with burning a college? Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It's this idea of, God, I'm going to follow you and keep you with all my heart, all my soul. I think it literally is what you're describing here, where you're shaking tables, your whole life is changing, your surrounding is changing. People will disagree with you. I fear everyone wants to be a likable Christian. You know, because it's like Jesus, you know, he was a sweet person. But Jesus was hated. Do you know what I mean? People were trying to kill him. And yet, you know, I guess today's age, it's easy for us to want to be very, you know, calm with people. But as you said, I think we can learn from him and try to be willing to stand for what we believe.
Definitely. I guess we can read I'll read a few more verses of this, because it's just further up point, and we'll skip a bit. All right. So this is verse 11, chapter 20. He removed from the entrance. Verse 11. Yeah. He removed from the entrance to the temple of the Lord the horses that the kings of Judah had dedicated to the sun. They were in the court near the room of an official named Nathan Melech. Josiah then burned the chariots dedicated to the sun. He pulled down the altars the king of Judah had erected on the roof near the upper room of Ahaz, and the altars Manasseh had built in the two courts of the temple of the Lord. He removed them from there, smashed them to pieces, and threw the rubble into the Kidron Valley. The king also desecrated. I find it interesting that he desecrated. I don't know if you did any research on that, but why he decided not just to, you know, throw them away or destroy them, but he decided to desecrate them? Like, I guess we don't really need to read the rest of that part anyway, but what he does, he destroys these things and he desecrates them with bones, and I'm not too sure why he needed to do that, but maybe it's just as a way to atone. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, the Bible, where I'm reading, it refers to like memorials of apostasy, you know, and I think the general idea, from what I understand, is if we're going off the history of what you and I have read regarding the kings and everything, it felt like when there were half measures, when maybe people had moved an Asherah pole or they moved things from the temple or whatever, then in like a few kings down, maybe even their son would come back and move the king straight back in.
Yeah.
You know, it's like we never left. It's like you can't do things with, I think it's a good point. It's like you can't do things half measures, if you get what I mean. Like, if you're cleaning up the house, if you're cleaning up the temple of your body, if you're trying to get right with God, you can't just move some, like for some of these things, you have to, as he's saying, desecrate it, because otherwise you'll find yourself coming back to it. A bit of a related point, I've heard a friend talk to me a couple times about how to move away from something that they were, you know, continuously doing, things that they didn't like doing. And they were talking about like, maybe I can reduce it and all of this, maybe I can move away from it, all of that stuff. But you have to move away from it, one, and completely like leave it from your life and replace it with godly things, if you get what I mean. It's not enough for me to say I'm going to stop doing A and just sit there and twiddle with my fingers. I'm just going to
thinking about it.
You know what I mean? Like, you'll just find yourself either right back there or just doing, you know what I mean? Like, you need to get rid of these things totally. Last thing, when we think about sin and all of that stuff, and then it might be that idea of like, why does God need to wipe out everyone at the end of the day that chooses not to side with him or chooses to side with sin and all of this stuff? I think in real life we're understanding the reason for this whole wiping clean slate, in the idea that sin is so tempting, you just need an inch, just a glance, and it can start to grow in you. So that's why it needs to be a full clean. But yeah, what did you want me to read? Did you want me to read anything?
So I want to now move to verse 31 actually, because between about 13 to 29 or 29, it's about the desecration of the. Actually, I just realized. So in verse 21, we can talk about the. So in verse 21, if anyone would like to read that, but we don't need to here. But if anyone at home wants to know what's happening in between, it's a celebration of the Passover.